you know what we do? We go in and we very enthusiastically tell the person what our product or service is, and we show them our information, we dazzle them with our literature and our footwork, and then we, when the person has been completely overwhelmed with our charm and our enthusiasm and our verbal agility, we then take a deep breath and we sit back and we say, well, what do you think? Isn't that right? Well, what do you think? And you know what they say? Well, I'd like to think it over. I'd like to talk it over with my boss, husband, cousin, uncle, brother, sister, partner, board of directors, banker, accountant, whatever it happens to be. Could you call back on me later? One of the great secrets of success in sales is to understand that people don't think it over. At the instant you walk out of that door, they have forgotten you ever lived. People don't think it over. When they say to you, let me think it over, what you have done is you just simply ended the interview and you've, if you like, ended your possibility of selling. There's one other statistic very recently. When trying to change a person from one supplier to another, we find that, again, 80% or more of all first purchases from a new supplier take place after the 5th call. And that only 10% of salespeople make more than 5 calls. 50% or more of salespeople only make 1 call. So when you're selling to a company and you want to become established as their supplier, remember that it usually takes 5 visits. I'm not talking about 5 hours, I'm just talking about 5 visits, going in, seeing them, talking to them, telling them you're available, you have the products or services. Usually after the 5th visit that people start to become interested. Now the reason why we're talking about this is simply this, is that there is a direct inverse relationship between the fear of rejection and high self-esteem. That the more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. It's almost as though they are escalators that go in different directions. And one escalator is the up escalator to high self-esteem, and the other is the down escalator to the fears of failure and the fears of rejection. And that the more you like yourself and the more higher your self-esteem, the faster you go down the reverse escalator, the lower your fears of failure, the lower your fears of rejection. The first thing that we have to learn is when a person says no to us, they're not saying no to us as persons, they're simply saying no to our offering. The big mistake that we make is if we hear too many no's, what happens? We start thinking that it's us that is being told no to. And since it's so depressing to be told no, to be rejected continually, what we do is we stop making calls. We start cutting back our calls to an hour, hour and a half a day, and this is how we do it. We get up in the morning, we say, well, I got to get out today, I got to make a living, but first of all, I've got to go and shuffle my business cards. And I've got to go and check in the office, see if there's been any phone calls. All those people thinking over my proposition, maybe they've called in and ordered some. And we go into the office and we've got to have a little bit of coffee. I mean, you've got to wake yourself up in the morning. You can't just start off without some coffee. And you've got to chat with other people, get your jaw warmed up and sort of get loosened up. So we do this and we spin our wheels until about 10:30 and we say, well, geez, it's almost lunchtime. I better go out and call on somebody. So we rush out and we call on somebody. The call's over between 11 and 11:30 and we say, well, we can't call on anybody now because everybody's going for lunch, right? And you don't want to interrupt people when they're going for lunch. Everybody goes for lunch at 11:30. So we go and we kill time. 12:30, 1:30 comes, and you don't want to call on people immediately after they get back from lunch. I mean, that'd give them indigestion, wouldn't it? They've got work to do. So we don't make our next call till 2, 2:30, 3 o'clock. We make a couple of calls, and now it's 3:30, 4 o'clock, and of course, everybody's on their way home, aren't they? Nobody's in their office after 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and besides, they don't want us to bother them that time. So we go back to the office and we say, boy, oh boy, what a day, no luck. Do you ever hear the story of the 2 guys that go back to the office at the end of a sales day, and one says, boy, did I have a lot of good interviews today. And the other one says, yeah, I didn't sell anything either. You see, the reason why we put off making these calls, and you've all done this, tell me that you have. You've all done this where you make one call at one end of town and you make your second call in the afternoon at the other end of town, right? So that you've got a nice solid hour of driving in between to put off. It's almost like going into combat every time you keep putting it off. Well, the reason that we do that is that we fear failure and we fear rejection. And every single thing that we do to raise our own self-esteem, positive self-talk, positive motivation, positive enthusiasm, individual training, every single thing that we do to raise our level of self-esteem raises our sales effectiveness. We know that from all of our studies, there is a direct one-to-one relationship between self-esteem and sales earnings. That the more you like yourself, the better you will do in this field. And that if you become a perpetual self-esteem generating organism, that alone will contribute more to your income than any other thing. Now let me tell you why that's true. In sales, one of the things that we know is that all successful sales are based on one factor, and it's usually friendship. It's what is called the friendship factor in selling. The friendship factor in selling simply says this, is that a person will not buy from you until they are genuinely convinced that you are their friend and you are acting in their best interests.